welcome to the Concoction Podcast, where we talk about everything and anything. What's going on, Chris?
Everything good? I'm not sure what's going on. This is a lot what's going on. What's going on, you guys? Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have a good guy here, man. Alan from Dry Dock Brewing, man. Brewing in Aurora. Special guest. Very, as you can see, very special guest. Yeah.
Always the guy that brings the beers always.
That's the best guy.
Yeah, he goes up in the list immediately. Yeah.
That's actually pretty unbelievable. Thank you for bringing all
no
this
problem.
beer.
If I bring beer, then I get to have one while we're sitting here. So.
Right,
Of course,
right,
yeah.
I'm a big fan of you guys' beer, and especially because you make an awesome beer. Most important than anything,
Right.
It's a really good beer. I was telling you before we started. I even went to the store and bought a book on how to
Nice.
make beer because you guys have everything there now.
Yes. So we have 2 brewing locations. One's out on Tower Road, so pretty close to here, Tower and 70. And then the original brewing location is down on Hamden and Chambers in Aurora. And then right next door is the Brew Hut, where you can get homebrew supplies for brewing beer, wine, making cheese, kombucha, all kinds of anything that pretty much that you can ferment, you can get supplies for it.
Wow.
That's great.
It's like a little science lab in there, man.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's you even get classes.
We
right?
do. We do home brewing classes and cheese making classes. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
all right. So, before we start with the whole story of the brewery,
Mm-hmm.
well, let's have a drink, right?
Let's do
Cheers.
Cheers.
the good stuff. There we go. Cheers, guys.
I'm having the new beer. We're gonna go through this one. So,
We're having the new raspberry blonde beer, and it's absolutely delicious, man.
yeah.
Ah, thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been killing it so far. People have been excited about that beer. So.
Is this your first year trying that? or-
First time, yeah, we've brewed that and put it in cans. So it's a limited release that's available in our booty boxes, which
Okay.
are mixed pack 12 packs. So in the liquor stores, that's the only way you can get them, and then you can get it on tap in the brewery, and then limited locations out and about, and then 6 packs at the brewery too, which
Very nice.
we're actually
Nice.
almost out of.
We have one.
Yeah.
Well, we're drinking one. Well, let's tell us about the history of the brewery.
So Dry Dock was founded in 2006. I think that's right. Maybe it was 2005. Originally started as the Brew Hut. So the Brew Hut had been around for about 25 years or so. But it existed before Dry Dock. So Kevin and Michelle are the current owners of the Brew Hut. And they bought that a few years before opening Dry Dock. So they brought the Brew Hut, and then they decided, hey, let's open a
Right.
brewery. So then they opened in 2005 is when they opened. And immediately had some success. We were the first brewery in Colorado to have the tasting room model. 'Cause
Oh,
before
nice.
that, it was either people were just manufacturing larger breweries and didn't have a tasting room, or they were brew pubs.
Oh, okay.
So Dry Dock was one of the first ones, or the first one, to say, "Hey, we're a small brewery. We don't have food, but you can just come here and buy beer." It was in the back of the current location of the Brew Hut, where it currently exists, and it was a much smaller system.
Right.
So I actually went back there way back when I was learning how to brew. I think they had just opened, and definitely what you can do now is you could do back then and buy a pint of beer and walk through the homebrew shop and
Very nice.
and shop for homebrew supplies. And then grew from there, had some success in beer competitions, and in 2006 won our first medal at the World Beer Cup for actually the Amber Ale,
Okay.
which used to be called an ESB. It's still an ESB, but now it's called Amber. And since then, I've reeled off a bunch of medals across multiple brewers. And for a while there, we had one of the longest streaks in the nation of winning awards at GABF.
Nice.
And then we have a pretty good streak at winning awards at the World Beer Cup for anything from apricot blonde wins medals, the ESB, to German lagers, to our barrel aged barley wine. So across a wide variety of styles.
Hey
So,
guys,
Yeah, so a lot of success with that initially. And then about, I want to say I've been there 4 years. So about 6 years ago, they opened the production facility, which is the one off of Tower Road, and started canning. I think the initial plan was for the amber ale to be the flagship beer.
The big one.
Yeah, but Apricot Blonde blew up, and now it's actually, I think, the single best-selling craft beer in the state of Colorado.
Wow.
So,
Damn.
I was about to ask that, like,
Yeah.
because I do recognize those two. I was gonna say which is the big one, but
Apricot Blonde's
I
the
would've
big one.
guessed.
I didn't bring the sour apricot, but this one's first, and then sour apricot's second. So, which is a sour version of that. Yeah, and we're actually the largest brewery that only distributes in Colorado. So
Okay.
anybody that makes more beer than us in Colorado is in multiple states.
Gotcha.
Oh, nice. Well, if you're concerned or anyone that listened to this episode and was like, what's that noise in there? That was our friend Gabe. He just got here. Do you want a beer? We have some.
Yeah. Come
Which
on in,
one?
man. And he's wearing the good luck Nuggets hat for tonight, man. Go Nuggets. So basically it started off small, and you started just with beer. So my question would be, like, at this point you guys obviously grew. You're a lot bigger, you're very recognizable. Is it hard? Are the rules hard for a brewery to serve food as well, or why didn't you start that part of it?
I wasn't involved when they started
Gotcha.
the brewery, but there are brew pub licenses and there's manufacturing licenses, and it's not really harder to do one or the other. If you have a brew pub license, I think a certain portion of your revenue has to come from food sales.
Yeah.
But it's really not difficult to obtain one or the other. It's just, I think the decision comes down to, do you want to run a brewery, or do you want to run a brewery and a restaurant? And
Right.
there's pros and cons to both. Running two, you're basically, if you do a brewery and a restaurant, you're running two different businesses. But you have people coming in for food, which gives you an outlet for selling the beer.
Right.
And that, I think that was the concern at the time. A lot of people didn't think that people would come in if you just had beer, and Dry Dock took a chance on it. It worked out for them. So that was the concern back then. And now I think there's definitely in Colorado more just tasting rooms than brew pubs now. And brew pubs are actually a little bit harder to find these days than the standard breweries. So
it's probably because it's hard to deal with the food part, it's just a pain in the butt to like be dealing with food
Inspections,
options,
licenses, things like that.
things going bad if you're in sell.
running a restaurant's hard. I can't imagine trying to run a brewery and a restaurant.
And you guys have popcorn there. That's all. When I go there, that's all I care.
That's all you
I was like, "Jeez, give me my beer and I get some popcorn. I'm good to go for another couple hours here."
yeah, we have the popcorn. I eat a lot of the popcorn to keep me going.
Right.
And then we have a bunch of good restaurants around South Dock too, like the Wing Hut. They make really good wings, and the 5280. I think that's 5280 banh mi. If you haven't had that, it's pretty good. So.
Do you allow do you allow people with food to come in?
Oh
with
yeah,
their food?
yeah. You can, and some of the restaurants around there will actually deliver.
Oh, nice.
To the brewery. Yep.
Even better. You don't have to deal with the
both
food.
worlds, yeah. And then at North Dock, I think on Fridays, generally every Friday, we'll have a food truck too. So there are options. Yeah.
Perfect.
This is really cool. Do you guys do events and stuff like that?
We do. So we do some smaller events at South Dock, including the classes that you were talking about with the Brew Hut. We'll do food and small food and beer pairings. Like we'll do a cheese and beer pairing on occasion. And we always every year do like a Girl Scout cookie and beer pairing, which is pretty fun. And then we do a lot bigger events at North Dock because we have the space for it. So we do private events up there for people. And then we have big events like our used to be the Canniversary, but we were told we couldn't use that name. So it's Canvitational. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for that. I think it's not Canvitational. Can Bash is what we call it now.
I like it.
So that's the anniversary of North Dock, but we also hold like the whole brewery's anniversary up there too. And then those are our two big premier events up there. But
Very nice.
then we'll do some beer releases and things up there too.
Nice.
That's pretty cool.
So considering that You sell the biggest craft beer in Colorado, and obviously you're recognizable. You're big as you are. What makes you unique in this like state full of craft brewery? I mean, you have Odell, you have New Belgium. What
Right.
makes you unique? What made you come forward? What gave you your success? I guess is what I would be asking.
Well, as somebody that brewed somewhere else for, the initial part of Dry Docks, they pretty much opened a couple years before I started brewing.
Okay.
So I kind of watched Dry Dock get bigger. And I guess, I don't know if this necessarily makes us unique, but what I always liked about Dry Dock was them doing a wide variety of styles, and still being able to do the weird stuff too. And I guess apricot blonde is really not weird anymore, but to me, I take pride in being able to make beers, fruity beers or saisons or just a variety of different styles, but also really kind of hone in and do the classics,
Right.
and do them well. So that's kind of why Dry Dock stood out in my eyes, and is the fact that they made such world-class beer, and we still make world-class beer. So that's why it stands out to me, and the fact that it is only Colorado is pretty impressive. I think we found ourselves in a good position by only being in Colorado. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Have you guys thought about going to another states?
Not seriously, no. Yeah, it gets a lot more complicated going to other states. But right now, I think we're comfortable with how much beer we're selling in Colorado. Gotcha. So why make it harder if we still feel like we could fill the pipeline a little bit.
Why break your head on it if you're having success?
Right, exactly.
And speaking of success, and you did mention you worked somewhere before. We don't actually know a lot about you personally. You're an actual brewer with Dry Dock.
Yeah, so my title is managing brewer.
Okay.
Which is a unique title. We weren't really sure what to call me. Essentially, I was hired as the head brewer in 2015 of the production facility, so North Dock. And then so our head brewer at South Dock kind of moved on. And Kevin and Michelle, the owners, saw an opportunity to kind of make things a little bit more cohesive, and asked me to run both facilities.
Nice.
So I oversee the production of beer at our small brewery and our large brewery. And I get involved in some other things that go beyond the brewing. So it's a fancy title for head brewer plus, I guess.
It's not called a master brewer? Or is that a different title?
So master brewer is actually a title for somebody that went to an official school.
Gotcha.
I haven't done that. I kind of learned through breweries and experience.
It's like the chefs that you can't call chef because they didn't go to school, but they know everything. Yeah.
Awesome. And then there's brew master, which is somebody that is basically in charge of brewing and recipe formulation and things like that, which I am, but I don't
have the title.
I don't love the title because I don't want to call myself a man because I don't think that I'll ever, I'm still learning every day. And I do have a lot of things. Like there's some things that are basic things and I've learned those over time, but there's still a lot of things that are happening that are new and that I'm trying to learn.
Plus the career as a career, I don't think is very old. No, it's kind of, at least here in Colorado is new. I mean, I know Metro got their program a few years ago. It wasn't before that. I don't think there's any programs.
Traditionally, it's really old. But
brewing,
as far as the craft brewing and that boom and it being having jobs outside of the really big breweries like Bud and Coors and being a wide variety of jobs and having a lot of schools for it. Yes, that's very
right. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
because breweries. Yeah, well, you've been making beers
for a second there. I was like, I think vampires used to brew back in the thousands.
I don't know. Yeah, we had it forever. I mean, officially a title in a school. Going to school. Yeah.
Yeah. So the schools. There's been a couple schools around because a lot of the big breweries have them, and I have people that went to school there.
CSU, my man.
Yes, they have one. But yeah, the proliferation of it has definitely been more recent for sure.
Yeah.
What got you into it? I mean, you didn't go to school for it, right? But what got you into it? Were you a garage brewer yourself?
Sort of, yes. my cousin, he'd probably kill me if he heard me saying this. My cousin, who was like a brother to me, introduced me to craft beer when I was 16.
Nice. Let's hear it for the cousins.
he gave me good beer though. So I started, having the occasional craft beer when I was 16, and definitely got into it more as I became of age and could buy it legally.
You could go into the stores and ask
and pick it up. And so I moved to Colorado when I finished school, and just kind of started trying more and more beers from local beers, California beers, Belgian beers, German beers, and just kind of just affinity grew with it. And then I remember I went to GABF one year, and I was like, I'd already been a few times. I think it was 2005 or 6. I was like, I'm just going to go through, and I'm actually going to look for beers that I want to try. And then from there, I kind of started studying taste profiles and what caused them. And then kind of randomly decided, hey, I might want to do this for a living. So that's when I started homebrewing, because I figured I wanted to do this. And so started homebrewing, did a few batches to kind of learn how to do it. And then I was actually looking to move to Summit County anyway. And I kind of stumbled into a job up there at Backcountry Brewery, which is
nice.
Was around for about 22 years. And I was there for 7 to 8 years.
Nice.
And just kind of stumbled into a job there. Was at the bar one day and started talking to beer to a guy at the bar. And he was like, happened to be like a manager, and was like, hey, we're looking to hire. So I went in and started like cleaning kegs and selling beer, and then shortly after that started brewing. So
wow, look at that.
That's nice.
It was your destiny.
I guess. Well, a little bit of luck, a little bit of hard work. It's got to have a little bit of both, right?
You for real love beer, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a good title for you.
He's not lying.
One of our dry dock beers, our shirts. Yeah.
So nice.
That's really cool. Beer, there's a whole science behind beer, no, to make a good beer. There's not that simple. I mean, once I'm pretty sure it's simple, but behind the whole process, there's a quite nice process of, you have to be
chemistry,
precise what you're gonna do so the flavor comes good and all that, right?
Yes.
It's how difficult it is.
It's not difficult to make beer. I think you have to kind of give a shit. First of all, I think you have to be passionate about it. And there are a lot of people that do it, but I think there's also a lot of people that get into it and find it to be maybe not as glorious as they thought it was going to be.
Gotcha.
But there's a lot of information out there that's free information that can teach you how to make a good beer. As long as you're willing to put forth the effort. Right. Now, I'm not going to pretend like going in and doing it on a bigger scale is easy. You definitely have a lot of trial and error and making mistakes doing that. But the basics are there. The basics are out there. And the biggest thing is cleanliness, which we were talking about earlier, sanitization and clean vessels and keeping oxygen levels low. So making good, clean, basic beer is fairly easy, but then I think there is something to be said for experience to refining beer and refining your palate and figuring out how to fine tune things and make a beer maybe a little bit more compelling or dynamic than another beer. And I think that's something that might be innate with some people, but also I think is just something that comes with experience, because like even the best brewers have made bad beer at some point. You learn lessons from it.
That's where my next comment would be, because I was like, at some point you had to make some mistakes. So I was thinking like, we know for sure where you are now, you're not making mistakes. But
we still make mistakes.
You still make mistakes. So, some garage experiments that went terribly wrong.
Yeah, a few of those, and I wouldn't necessarily call them experiments, but there's just when kettle souring was kind of a new thing. I was making some kettle sours at my last brewery that were kind of they weren't ideal. But, you know, I took that experience and I took it to dry dock, and, you know, through the help of a lot of people, was able to execute our sour apricot pretty seamlessly the first times around. And again, even then, even though you kind of know what you're doing, it still has its ups and downs, and you know, every day you're learning something new. But yeah, it's I do think that there's like, and I think there's some people that just were made to be brewers. I don't know if I'm one of those people, but I feel like I have a good palate.
You look the part. I would say, yeah, he's got the
hair.
t-shirt. Yeah. The look.
But
stereotype of the breweries, I think.
the grungy out of a bridge guy.
But in just learning from your lessons and studying and trying to learn more every day, I think is just what. And you know, if you being able to taste a beer and associate what made that beer taste that particular way, I think is, you know, something that helps you make better beer.
Because there's a huge difference, you know, with all the beers. Even people will say, "Oh, it tastes the same." No, there's difference. And even when you're gonna have beer with food, there's a science behind that.
Right.
Some beers go better with steaks or burgers and things like that. So it's not as simple as it sounds. I mean, it's simple for us because we just open it and drink it. we didn't think about that.
Right. How do you deal with that? So like each individual, like you have personal taste, you're an individual guy, but you work for a company, you're trying to make the best beer. Right. Where do you run into like, I love this beer and nobody in this building does, and I'm making something that I don't even like, but it's sold a lot. Like how do you balance that? How do you find that perfect balance?
Well, I tell Kevin and Michelle, I was like, I'll make anything you guys want if you think it'll sell, as long as you let me have the opportunity to make the beers that I also like to make and like to drink. So, and they're good about that, and we're lucky to have both breweries where I tend to lean towards light lagers or lagers in general, and then hoppy beers. But it is hard. It's hard because I like to try to, even if it's a style that's kind of accepted as a style, I like to still try to make it unique. I don't want to make something repetitive that's just like everything else out there. And I think like the hazy IPA is a good example of that, because hazy IPAs are supposed to be kind of fruity, juice-like, and I think that's like that. But it's also, I used a different yeast on it. That's nice. Kind of a neat. I wouldn't say it's unique, but not a lot of people are using it right now. It's gaining in popularity. It's a Norwegian farmhouse yeast, nice. But it gives you a lot of those fruity aromas and flavors. But it's definitely different than this. I don't want to say standard hazy IPA out there because it's such a new style. But it's definitely different than, I think you can take a group of hazy IPAs and they'll all be well made, but they'll all be kind of fairly the same.
Gotcha.
And I wanted to be like a little bit outside of that. So it's just a struggle to try to make something that you like and try to keep in mind what everybody else like. It definitely is.
I mean, at least you're trying, right? And if it works. If not,
well, and we run it. The nice thing about having the small brewery is we can run these things by people and get feedback.
Employees.
And employees too. And the employees are really good about the feedback on that stuff.
Gotcha.
So do you make your beers on a small scale, give it a try to everybody, and if they say we're good, we're gonna try, and the brewery, then you make it like the big scale?
Yeah, definitely. So this is again, the hazy IPA is a good example of that. Brewed that a few different ways at first, and then when we used that yeast, it seemed to really stand out with people, and people seem to like it the most. Now we just got to teach everybody else about it and see if they like it. But we definitely brew small batches up there and see how they go over. And it's a mixed bag though, because there are so many people. I think you can end up chasing your tail a little bit if you try to make everybody happy.
Yeah,
because you can make one beer that this group of people over here loves, and then this group of people over here will not like. And if you try to appeal to everybody, then you'll
get lost in your own thoughts.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the musician, right? Like they have their own little personal taste. They get famous with certain songs, but on the other hand, certain songs are liked by most, and when you talk to these bands, a lot of times they don't like that song that
Yeah.
was really big, but it's what sells. I mean, in your case, do you have a favorite beer that's your personal favorite that might not be everybody's favorite, or do you have a favorite beer that is actually everybody's favorite?
I like apricot blonde, so it is it's not my favorite. It is my favorite because it pays the bills. But it's not usually going to be the first beer I choose to drink. But it is when I do drink it, I'm like, oh, that's a really good beer. I see why it appeals to a lot of people, and a lot of people are kind of surprised by it. And I don't like to assign genders to beer. It happens a little bit, but. I have seen like some burly guys come up and when we're sampling the beer and they're like, oh, I like Miller Lite or whatever.
Right.
And you give them that and they're like, whew, that's pretty good. I'll drink that. But as far as like from stuff we package, I would say amber is probably one of my favorites.
Gotcha.
And it's ambers aren't necessarily a very hot beer these days, but it's such a good drinkable beer.
It's delicious.
Yeah, it's a good beer.
That's what I'm having right now. I'm like, I had to put it aside because I want to try the other ones before I get drunk.
Right.
It's delicious,
Right.
man. This is great beer.
And then as far as like smaller stuff that we don't can, like a lot of people like our Pilsner that we make at South Dock.
I've had it.
Yeah,
It is very
it's
good.
really good. But I prefer the Helles. I prefer like the less hoppy. So
Right.
I don't know.
So
It's kinda-
when do you decide to can? Like, what level does it have to get when you say can this? Like, is it the people that decide that, or is it a
it goes
group
both
of you
ways.
guys?
So sometimes it is like, oh, it was really popular at South Dock, so we should can it. And so I'm pushing for Pilsner, and that would be one of those because it is fairly popular when we have it on tap. And then sometimes it's like, hey, we want to make style X,
Gotcha.
and then we'll start brewing it at the South to try to kind of fine tune it.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So
Very nice.
Do you have one beer that you probably thought was like, this is not as good as I thought it would be, and then become a bomb? Like, it was crazy.
There's always one, right? Where where nobody had faith in it, and it's like it goes up the list. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It wasn't one of the ones we made at North Dock, but I made like a margarita beer last year, and I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess it makes sense that it did well. But so we made it for an old Chicago like mini tour, so like a five location.
The Cinco
tour.
de Mayo tour.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
think I saw that. Yeah.
And then and it did pretty well. And I don't know. I'm trying to think of another one. We've made so many different ones. We did make an imperial stout, a barrel aged imperial stout last year that I was actually excited about it. It had cascara in it, which is the fruit of coffee beans. So coffee beans have fruit around them, and then they take the fruit off, and then they dry the beans and then roast them. And we put that in the imperial stout, and I was kind of like hesitant about it because it is a little bit of a different kind of flavor. It's kind of
Is it strong flavor? Or?
It's kind of tobacco-y almost,
wow.
but like sweet tobacco-y, and then it has a little bit of a cherry note to it. And so I wasn't sure if people would like it or not, and I think a lot of people liked it, so I was kind of surprised by that one. But that was one of those that I chose. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I want to do this.
Right.
And it turned out okay.
It seems like you have a lot of freedom when it comes to trying.
It sounds like it. Yeah.
Generally, yeah, especially at South Dock. And they generally, the owners generally trust me to kind of keep rolling with stuff, and they don't like stand over my shoulder and
Like,
hey, make sure
right.
this is going to be good. But I like to get feedback from customers and even employees about like, hey, what do you guys want to see? And hopefully we can squeeze those
Work on
those
that.
in. Yeah.
Very
And it's
nice.
nice they're open mind for you to to let you try.
They
Right.
Because there might be some other bosses be like, no, this is already working.
Right.
Let's go. Let's
Right.
keep going with that one. It's pretty cool.
Well, I think a lot of Dry Dock's success over the years has been from the creativity of a lot of people, from brewers to employee input
To servers, to bartenders.
brew hut input. So
Nice.
Yeah, for sure. But because of all that success, Dry Docks has tried pretty much everything. It's like
Yeah.
on some scale. So sometimes like I'm like, all right, I want to make this, and I'll dig through like some of the old recipes and like, oh,
Nice.
they already did this several
Yeah.
years ago.
So does the ingredients dictate some of these drinks? So for example, like, is there a season where certain ingredients will make the apricot blonde very good because the ingredient itself that season was very special? Do ingredients dictate some of your beers?
Definitely. So one thing we like to use is peaches when there's peach harvest in Colorado. But as far as like the quality, yeah, some years it's different from batch to batch. With the apricot, we have a company. It's Oregon Fruit, which you can buy their puree at the grocery store in small
Right.
for making pies and stuff, and then you can get it at the brew hut too. But they try to be really consistent.
Gotcha.
So I think they do a little bit of blending to try to keep the variation from year to year down. So we don't see changes in it. But definitely if you're using local ingredients and even hops, even if they're not local, we definitely see changes from crop year to crop year on that.
Okay.
And the one instance I could think about is our West Coast IPA, Hop Abomination. There was like a stretch I didn't love it, and I couldn't figure out why, and I was like shifting the hop ratios around and trying to get the flavor out of there that I didn't love. It wasn't horrible, but I just didn't think it was as good as it could be. And I remember I was at a brewery one day, and they had an all Centennial IPA, which is Centennial hops, which I like. So I ordered that, and I think it was the same crop year, and I tried a sip of that, and I was like, that is what I don't like. And it wasn't like it wasn't that the beer wasn't made well or anything.
Right.
It was just that particular crop year was not great.
Gotcha.
So once I kind of pieced that together, I started dialing that hop
I
back.
see.
And then once we got to the new crop year of the Centennial, that it really started popping again. And it was a much better beer. So yes, year to year, different ingredients definitely play a role. For
All
sure.
the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I became a fan of you guys' beer because I live very close to you guys' brewery on Hampton first time. So it was pretty convenient, and I was like, cool. And when I went to the place, they have like where you guys sell all the equipment
shop, yeah.
and the shop
The
and all
brew
that
hut, yeah.
stuff. Yeah. So that's when I bought the book and everything. And I tried the beers, and then I was like, this is delicious. Then I moved from that place and went to a liquor store just to grab a beer. One of the things they always brought my attention, this is how superficial I am. Of course, this is me being superficial, is the look of the cans.
Right. Very cool.
And these cans, I told you before we started too, is like, they're always pretty cool cans. Where that comes from, like, really also art.
The designs,
I don't
the
know where the
artists.
designs of some of the older stuff came from, but I think a lot of it's been internal employees over the years. And
Nice.
the recent ones, like, well, the raspberry is based on apricot, but this one and the hazy IPA and then the pineapple milkshake IPA that we have coming out were employee of ours. She's not with us anymore, Erin, but she was very good at making these labels. So the diver here, and then the pineapple is actually a jellyfish. So that one's pretty
Gotcha.
cool. Yeah.
So it starts as a hand drawing, then it becomes computer animated. Or?
Yeah, they use software, and
Gotcha.
they're generally people with graphics design
Nice.
backgrounds. Yeah. So
But everything I hear from them, man, it sounds like you guys stick to local. You're local artists. They design your cans.
Yep.
How your ingredients, are they mostly local? Like,
So that's a little bit different. We do at South Dot quite a bit use local ingredients, but one thing I mentioned earlier about being like authentic to style. So one thing we do is if we're making a German beer, we like to use German ingredients. So
I like that. Yeah.
one of my favorites. So they're maltsters, or who makes the malted barley. Weirmann is in Bamberg, Germany, and I think they've been doing it for hundreds of years, literally like 200 something years. And I think they make some of the best malt in the world. So when I'm making a German beer, I like to use their ingredients or their malt, and then use German hops for those too. And then something like the amber ale that's more English, we'll use malt from England.
Nice.
And hops from England and English yeast. So And then of course we use Aurora water for a lot of this. For sure.
I like that.
Honestly, I believe that's a big key to some of our beer. I think Aurora has great water. But
I'm sure they keep it clean.
right, it's good water. We do use if we're trying to have a local themed beer, we'll try to use some local ingredients, and we do that
Very
on
nice.
occasion for sure. But in some instances, it's not always feasible. But yeah, I always say that the water is the key ingredient because we've had so many brewers and so many good brewers that have gone on to open other breweries, and we've all seemed to have won medals with some of the same beers, and the same beer has won medals whether it was made at the small brewery or the big brewery. So the only consistent thing in that
Is
is the
water.
water.
Is it Aurora water?
Yeah, it
is
is
that
Aurora
what it
water,
is?
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
It's crazy, but it's true. I hear that the
So-
water is very important.
Anybody hearing this is going to start opening up some breweries in Aurora.
Yeah, we've got several now.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do. We definitely do.
Got some good ones.
You don't have to worry about it. I mean, people I think already know you guys' quality, so you're more than fine.
Oh no, yeah, but we have a pretty good relationship with all those guys, and there's some good beer being made in Aurora these days. so-
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Have you guys competed like in those international beer competitions?
So GABF is just the United States,
Mhm.
and so that one it's the beer festival too. Obviously, Great American Beer Festival.
Oh, I went to that one. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I
have
saw
one.
your cup back there.
Yeah.
And so that's just USA, and then every 2 years is the World Beer Cup, which is also put on through the Brewers Association, and that's in conjunction with the Craft Brewers Conference. So that just happened in April, but it was an off year for World Beer Cup. So World Beer Cup's really the only international competition we compete in, and that is literally breweries from I want
World.
to say like 30 to 60 countries or something.
Wow.
So you're competing against, if you're entering a German beer in a German beer category, you're actually competing against German brewers and English beers in English categories. So this has won a gold, amber twice, and in best bitter at World Beer Cup. So
Nice.
even competing against English breweries, and we've won some medals with some German beers against German beer
Oh,
brewers.
congrats.
So
That's awesome.
that's always it's a good feeling because I think at least the brewers I know like idolize is the right word, but they look up to those brewers and like they're trying to make beer as good as they do, those traditional breweries. So if you can compete against those guys in a blind tasting and they find your beer to be as good as theirs, it's always a good feeling. For
Yeah,
awesome.
Germany has everybody pretty much knows Germany is like the
German beer,
greatest.
Belgian
I love
beer,
it.
German beer.
I
I
love
remember what was the movie Beer Fest?
Yeah.
Right.
I tried one beer in Berlin. It was a German beer. It was unbelievable. The flavor was so good that actually when I came back, I tried to look in the stores and didn't find it.
Yeah.
Went to the website of the restaurant because I tried in a restaurant. It wasn't even like a bar or a liquor store and Google it, find the beer.
Yeah.
Trying to buy it here, but they don't sell it here. So
Yeah,
but-
even if you can find some of those German beers here, by the time they get here, they're not very fresh.
They're not that good. I would
it's
assume.
not gonna be fair. Yeah, that's pretty cool though. That you guys pretty much. I mean, you can tell the quality of beer, especially if you like quality.
Right.
Beers with
Like
quality.
you can enjoy a good tasting beer
Yeah.
and you're not stubborn about certain flavors that
Yeah,
you
because
got
I have friends, and I'm not gonna trash any other beer companies, but I have friends that are like very very big companies of beers, and my friends are like, "This is a great beer." I was like, "No, you need to try local." They're like, I think probably this is just maybe me saying this stuff, but I think in the local you can probably see some passion behind
Right.
like,
Yeah,
the
more
making of
artistic,
it,
more
yeah.
tasty.
And the big ones, it seems more like, I'll throw wherever hopes are in there, like they already have the size of how much they need to throw in there, and that's it, and just big ass production, and that's how the beer goes. But the local ones are like there's more artistic, there's more passion behind the making of the beer. So a lot of the time you can taste that, and it's really good beers.
We're a little spoiled, right? I think Colorado in general, craft beer wise, is a little spoiled, and it's nice to see that you guys built your own name in that. You have a little landscape for it.
right. Yeah.
how connected do you feel to the community? I want to say Colorado in general, but maybe more specifically Aurora. Like how connected are you to the community? What does your beer mean to the community, and what does the community mean to you?
Well, Dry Dock was the first brewery in Colorado, or not Colorado, sorry, in Aurora. And honestly, I don't even when I lived in Denver. I moved here in '99, then moved to Summit County for a few years, like 8 years, and then moved back down. And I don't know that I would have gone to Aurora. I didn't have another reason to go except for Dry Dock.
A lot of people
and it's
think
not a
that
knock on Aurora. It's just that
We
I
understand.
had my own little area that I lived in, I think a lot of people have come to Aurora because of Dry Dock, and as especially since I started working in Aurora, I've realized what a great community it is, and going to like the state of the city speeches and really getting to know what Aurora is about and how inclusive it is and how open it is to immigrants and and things like that. I really feel connected to Aurora, and I love Aurora. We are very involved in doing working with local charities, and sometimes they extend beyond Aurora, and then sometimes they're just in Aurora. So I think there's definitely a cohesive relationship between Dry Dock and Aurora, and it's, me working at Dry Dock, just that alone has given me a greater appreciation,
a different perspective.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
And the food's great too. So many different kinds of food, and it's just, that's one thing I was like, I can't, now that I work like at South Dock, there's so much good food on the way home, and my fiance will come down and we'll stop somewhere on the way home, and I'm just like, I can't believe I wasn't coming down here for all this great food before working here. Yeah.
Around the whole country, is Colorado one of the states that has most breweries?
Yes, total, and obviously I think California has the most craft breweries just purely based on size, but per capita, I think at first is Vermont, and then Montana, just because they have a lot, and then they have such a low population, and then I think Colorado and Oregon around 4 and 5 or 5 and 6 or something like that. So we have a lot in general, and then we also have a lot based on population. So it's a huge contributor to the economy here.
And compared to another states, are we winning?
Are we winning?
Can we flex now? Or?
I think we have really good beer here, and there's some other places I like to go visit that have really good beer too. But I do think, like, based on my perception of what consumers think, like, I think we're really proud, because I'm a consumer too, obviously, but I think we're really, as a brewer and a consumer, we're really proud of Colorado beer, because we have a little bit of everything. We're not known just for any particular style like some places are, and I think we have a lot of great beer here. So
it is very true. And every city, it seems like in Colorado, every city you go to, there's like a very well-known craft brewery. And I've had beer in Oregon. I've had some Montana beer. And I can't say that every city you go to, you'll find that.
Right.
But Colorado does seem like that. And I'm not saying there's many in each city, but there's at least one that's almost nationally memorable.
Yeah, definitely.
I always have friends visit them from Colombia. That's where I'm originally from. So they come here and they always think they know beers. It's cute because I was the same way. We don't have that many beers over there. There's barely the whole craft beers are barely coming out. They're doing more local breweries. So of course they don't have all these options. And it's really nice when you bring somebody here and they're like, no, let me show you what's like real beers. And I've taken some of my cousins to drag to you guys' place, and shit, everybody falls in love. Everybody's like,
it's hard not to.
This is beer. This is real beer. So.
But I'm patient. I'm patient with them. I'm patient with everybody because we all started in high school. We all started young, and we all had our cheap little beers. Like you don't know to love something until you know it. And when you get of age around here, you start to realize, you know what? I haven't been drinking real beer here lately. And the more you taste, the more you know. And I'm patient with people. I'm like, you haven't had beer yet, but it's not your fault.
Yeah,
We're about to take you to Dry Dock. We're about to take you somewhere. Yeah.
Nice.
You guys are in, when it comes to price, your beers are now extremely expensive but extremely cheap.
Right.
It's you guys are like right
It's
there.
a
no?
it's a great prize, right?
Well, we were able to do that through research and economies of scale a little bit. But I think at least from my perspective, and I think for the owners too, that we still view it as it's like beer is everybody's drink, right? And we don't want, like, some beers are more expensive than others, but we're not always chasing and trying to push our limits on what we can charge. We want it to be a quality but affordable product, right? It's kind of the affordable luxury. To me, beer has always been that. Beer and coffee. I like coffee a lot too.
Me too.
Yep.
It almost goes hand in hand.
This is the
right.
coffee of the afternoon.
We probably could charge more, but
So when it comes to craft beer, craft breweries, where is the decision for pricing come from? Is it based on the difficulty of making that beer? Is it based on the ingredients and how hard they were to come by? Like, what dictates a price for a craft beer?
So both. With any business, we start looking at ingredients or whatever's used to make that product, and then we start looking at margins.
Gotcha.
And that's it's still a business, and I think most people get that, but a lot of people don't. They think it's just a fun time, but we have to be worried about margins. So we start with maybe what we think is the best, the most ideal scenario, like the wish list, and then if it's not feasible for a canned product, then we start maybe thinking about other options, not necessarily lesser quality, but just less volume of something or whatever. Whereas like at South, they're like, just use whatever you want to use, because you really cut into your margins when you start packaging it.
Gotcha.
When you put it in a can, that cuts into your margin, and then you're not selling you're selling a 6-pack for like basically the price of 2 pints almost.
Wow.
So yeah, but it's more beer. So that starts, when you start packaging it, putting it on the shelf, it cuts into your margins. So at South, we're like, just throw whatever in it, and we can charge appropriate price for it, and
Nice.
we'll at least make our money back, if not make some
Yeah.
money on it. So,
I'm starting to like the South.
it's two different scenarios. Like when we're putting it in a can, we have to be a lot more conscious of the ingredients and the costs and the volume and ordering the right amounts. Whereas at South, we're just kind of like, I want to buy that. How much is it? Yeah, whatever.
It's not that cheap to make beer. But anyone who's listened to this episode, probably we haven't made that much noise like in this episode. I've been here moving beers, opening.
Right.
People are like, what are they doing probably over there? Like,
It's a good indication of how good the beer is, because we're making so much noise. Yeah.
Well, the big question for a lot of people I know is, it's better to drink the beer straight from the can or put it in a
Draft.
in a little glass or something.
I think it's situational. So
It's a mood. He's like, it's like tea.
if you really want to experience the beer and get the full flavor or the full aroma, it's better to put it in a glass. And if you have a wine glass, sometimes that's good, like a red wine glass or a goblet or a globe. That's going to give you the best perception of aroma, which also affects flavor.
Gotcha.
And it lets it warm up and air out a little bit, and that'll give you the best perception. But sometimes, you don't want to, if you're sitting on a boat or sitting
Right.
on the beach, or
Right.
if you're out at the park or whatever, you don't.
You don't want to be the guy acting too fancy out there.
Not even that. You just don't want to bring glass there. It's just a lot easier. Like you're just drinking it out of a can and talking to people, right?
But
What about draft? So like the myth of canned beer is less tasteful than straight from the draft. What do you think?
keg.
What's your opinion on that?
I'll generally choose draft beer, and the reason for that is, well, hopefully wherever you're location you're at that the draft lines are clean. But cans and bottles get a little bit more oxygen pickup than kegs, just by the nature of how you have to fill them. And so oxygen's the enemy of beer. That's what's going to age and deteriorate a beer the fastest. So kegs generally get less oxygen pickup when they're being filled than cans. So
Gotcha.
I'll generally lean towards draft because I know it'll have less of that
Gotcha.
oxygen pickup and a
The
little
evil
bit better
H2O, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it was crazy when I opened this one and I put it in this wine glass.
Yeah.
You can
Tell the
smell,
difference,
Yeah, this thing is delicious.
Yeah, thanks,
Actually,
yeah.
I was like very surprised.
Lots of passion fruit aromas in that I get. Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of those flavors, but it's really good actually. What's the best way to pour the beer on a glass?
I usually tilt my glass, which you guys can't see.
Hold on. We're gonna do this because
We'll
this
do
is
it
probably
right.
this is what a lot of people is concerned.
Yeah.
Right.
Our biggest concern is how to drink the right way
The
beer,
right way.
right?
And that's the benefit of being on camera podcast. We could actually visually show people.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. We got the camera.
I'm gonna try the
Apricot.
apricot blonde.
Okay.
So let's show how's the right way.
A right
I'll
pour.
let you do the whole thing so that way everybody knows.
Our official show and tell on the podcast.
If you're gonna drink beer, this is the way you need to pour your beer in a glass.
So I usually tilt the glass and then pour fairly aggressively because you want to agitate the beer a little bit and get some of that head up there, get the foam up there.
Oh, look
and
at
so-
that.
See?
So, as I was mentioning earlier, aroma is very important because 85% of your perception of taste come from the aroma of things. So what the foam does is it's CO2 escaping the beer, so
Get
that
it.
opens up. Oh, sorry. That
He's
was
getting
great.
I see it so beautiful and there sitting. I need to try.
So when the CO2 is coming out and you get that head, that's opening up the aroma, so that opens up your flavor more, and then it looks pretty too.
That was
You
a
have nice
beautiful
head.
pour, man. We've poured a lot of beers during these podcasts, and nothing's ever
Nothing
looked
like
that nice. I'll
So
tell you
it
that
was
much.
too much or too little.
I've almost choked on foam before. I'm like, hope someone else is talking.
It really makes a difference the way you pour, I think, the
Yeah.
beer. Because we're stupid. We didn't do it right way.
Right.
That's awesome, man. So when it comes to like career wise, like we're drinking the beer, our stories are going to start to get better. Everything is going to seem like it's in heaven, good stuff. But where you're a brewer,
Mhm.
you're working at a local craft brewery, sounds like a dream job. But give me those scenarios of, man, this is a little difficult, or this is something that I didn't expect. Like the bad side that we don't like to talk about, but is if someone's choosing this as a career,
Yeah.
give them a warning.
It's there are definitely worse jobs out there. For
Absolutely.
Sure. I love my job, but it's a job. And,
Correct.
you know, it's beer doesn't really sleep that much, and sometimes it does its own thing. And you have mechanical issues because you're dealing with mechanical equipment. So as a manager, sometimes, you know, I get called in on the weekend, and I don't love that. And but that's, you know, it's part of the gig, and it's there's always things that go wrong. Not always, but there's things that go wrong.
It's life, right?
It is, and it's just because it's beer doesn't make it any less stressful.
Right.
Because it is a business still, and if I mess up or somebody else messes up, you know, I'm trying to make money for the owners,
Right.
and if
Right.
I affect that, then it's stressful for me. So I would say it's definitely more laid back than working on Wall Street, but it's still like, I think if most brewers that get into it have a passion for it, and if you screw up, I think most of us beat ourselves up more than anybody else ever could.
Maybe that's the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this, especially beers like in the music industry. I only can talk about the music because I play music and
Right.
I know the industry. I think is if you have passion for what you do, you can tell the difference in your product.
Right.
Like in the music, you can see, you can hear the guitars. There's a passion behind the music and the tones and all that
Right.
stuff. And in the beers, it seems like it's the same thing, especially with the local, the craft beers. You can see when there's a passion behind, there's a love for beers. You can taste the difference, compared to, again, the big ones. Like
Right.
I'm
It's
nothing
a-
against
it's-
them. I don't like them.
As cheesy as it sounds, it's like when your mom makes something and it doesn't quite taste as good. You're like, you didn't do it with love this time. I think it's the same with beer.
What's the key? Is salt? No, it's hopes.
So improvising, man, it sounds like what you just told us and what Christian's kind of touching on is like love for what you're doing, but because it is a job, would you say that improvising on the spot is a big part of what you do?
Yes,
or a big part of beer in
definitely.
general?
I think you have to be flexible because things don't always go as they should. Even in a bigger production scenario, I think actually probably more things go awry, and that's what I tell my brewers is that I think what makes a good brewer is not you needed to be able to do the same thing every time, but I think what really makes a standout brewer is when things don't go the way you thought they would go, how you react to that.
Gotcha.
And how you adjust, because you could screw up 1 minute, and depending on the decision you make, it could be screwed up forever, or it could be just you can adjust and fix it and go on from there. So you definitely have to be flexible, because again, it's a living thing. So you have yeast in there that's fermenting, and it doesn't always act the way
it should.
You can get it most of the time to act the way you want it to, but sometimes it doesn't, and you have to be flexible.
Alan, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
This has been great.
If you want to
now I'm kind of feeling tipsy.
if you want to sell some event or try selling us some of these beers, like real quick, try to sell them for us.
What's going on actually?
Yeah, some events, some stuff going on for you guys.
I think this weekend. I think it's this weekend. We have the pineapple milkshake IPA release at South Dock. So there's like a luau going on for that. The raspberry blonde. I don't remember if I mentioned this on there or off there, but that's in our booty boxes, which is our mixed 12 packs. That's the only way to get those out in liquor stores, or you can get them in 6 packs at the grocery store, or the liquor store. And that's actually going to be a rotator. So the next one through is going to be, I believe, a strawberry blonde.
Nice.
That will be in the 12 packs, and then blueberry from there. So, yeah. And then as far as like apricot blonde, that's pretty much in every liquor or grocery store. And
let me put it this way: if you wanted people to know, like Dry Dock, like if you had one chance to let someone know this is Dry Dock, what beer would you say?
Oh yeah, the apricot blonde.
Okay,
perfect. That's kind of to the general non beer geek, and I say that kindly because I'm a beer geek population. That's what everybody knows Dry Dock as is apricot blonde.
What about to the beer geek?
The beer geeks are probably more like the Pilsner and Wee Heavy, Bly's, some of the stuff that we've been making for a long time that you don't see everywhere.
Cool. Yeah, if people want more information about you guys, where they can find you?
Facebook's always good. Instagram, and then drydockbrewing.com.
Perfect.
So,
Sweet. Where's the location? So
North Dock, we have a tasting room at both facilities. North Dock is 2801 Tower Road, so the northern part of Aurora, just off of 70. And then South Dock is 15120 East Hamden Avenue.
Perfect.
So Hamden and Chambers.
He remembered that even after some beer. Man. Perfect.
I always struggle with that one. The one at South Dock, but I always struggle with
I need to go to that one, the other one.
I think so too. Yeah.
That's cool. So then, you can see the production facility there. It's it's nice. Yeah.
Cool. Appreciate it, man. Well, thank you for coming again. Thank you for the
thanks
beer.
having me, guys.
It's been great.
Yep.
Where they can find us?
They could find us at The Concoction Podcast. That's Instagram, Facebook, The Concoction One, Twitter. And definitely, man, you'll be able to see yourself on YouTube in a few days at the Concoction Podcast.
Yeah, go to our channel, the Concoction Podcast, on YouTube, and subscribe, like us, and share if you like this episode. We'll see you guys next week.
Alan, thank you, my man. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you.